This one's yours. You got oat milk, right? I got coconut. All right, so we got sound check. Jedi J, how you feeling?
I'm doing
Cheers.
great, Lady Lee. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm so excited for today.
It's delicious.
Isn't it? Oh, you could have sat in there if you want to. But you could leave the glasses in the hat if you want. Creates an element of mystery.
They're like, yo, who's that guy?
Don't worry about it. That's the Jedi with his lightsaber. What is up, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of the I Can and I Will podcast. Today, you guys, I told you in the last episode we were going to have a new guest, somebody who's super, super special. I'm so honored to have him on the show. I'm going to let him introduce himself. But before we introduce him, let me tell you who I am. I am your host, Sakaira, and this is episode 6 of the I Can and I Will podcast, you guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Check on in. So this is my mentor, my spiritual mentor, you guys. If you want to know how I got my start in spirituality, this man right here played a really, really big role in that. But I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you guys who he is, tell you guys, a little bit about him. I was going to say your name. You can introduce your name.
Right. So I'm esteemed to be before you guys today. My nickname, I go by the Jedi. That was a name given to me by the folks around me because of my keen sense of intuition and my inclination into a lot of stuff about Star Wars. But my actual name is Jonathan. And about me, just like anybody else growing up, I dealt with a lot of ups and downs, endured some hardships, had some good times, some bad times. But one main thing that I feel like was a defining factor with me and how I got here is me adhering to my intuition. And from a childhood, from a youth, I always wanted to know my role or the reason why I was here in this world, how this world was created, and what was my purpose. You know what I mean? I just woke up in this place with a particular identity, with particular parents, and I always thought that something doesn't come from nothing. There's always a cause behind things, and it caused me to question reality, eventually leaving Christianity. And I eventually got into metaphysics. We're out in New York. Harlem is like the mecca of consciousness. And started picking up books, doing a lot of questioning, and I got into a thing known as metaphysics. For those that don't know what metaphysics is, meta meaning under or beyond, and physics, which is the physical, or you could pertain it to physics as you know it. And some people refer to it as the occult, but nonetheless, I developed an infatuation with that because it helped me get answers about my current existence, my exegesis, and who I am as a being on this plane and my reasons here. So that includes astrology, astronomy, numerology, what do we talk about? Birth charts readings, Reiki, yoga,
Chinese medicine.
Currently a student of Chinese medicine. Currently taking up acupuncture and herbal medicine. And I don't just limit it to that. There's a lot of other sciences that I may not be aware of that I'm also inclined to engage into. The basis of what got me here is trying to figure out myself. And when I say myself, that's beyond what people would understand as their identity, as what your first and last name is, what's your social security number, what your favorite color is, or what your favorite cereal is. All that stuff is considered nugatory if you don't know who you are before you came in that. Because at some point, if we're not the body or the ego, then you have to know who you truly are before you came into that existence. And that was the main point of me getting into any of this, is discovering who I am pre-incarnation or becoming before entering into the physical.
You know what's crazy, Jay?
What's up?
So I told you guys, this is my spiritual mentor. Listen, I was a little gerb in college, knowing nothing about life. And this man, we met in computer science class. Actually, you know what? I think this is a good time to segue into how we got our start. So we went to school together. This was what, like 11 years ago?
Just about. It's like 2012, I think.
2012, right? So you guys do the math. It's 2024. We met in 2012. We had a computer science class together, so random. We sat next to each other, not knowing each other, just pick a seat. And I remember you asked me about my teeth and if I bleached them. That was my first conversation. And I was like, who is this guy? I was like, no, I just use toothpaste. And he was like, wow, they're really white. I'm like, thanks. But I remember feeling like, oh, he's so, like, he has such a warmth to him. Like, there's a kindness behind, like, his gestures. It didn't feel like predatory or anything like that. It just felt like somebody making nice conversation, And I remember our conversations from there started picking up, and we just talk about random things. And slowly but surely, I can't remember what the first conversation was, but we started talking about some real esoteric things. And at the time, you guys, I was heavily brainwashed into Christianity. I was a wanderer at the time too, because I didn't feel like I truly resonated with religion, but it was all I knew because I was indoctrinated based on how I grew up. And so I was seeking answers, and I didn't know that the universe had sent me somebody with some solutions, right? Or at least some gems to help plant the seeds and like help me, grow and flourish in a certain trajectory. But we started to develop a friendship through that one class, and then we got really, really cool after. And he knew a lot about the city. We're from New York, so he would take me to like vegan restaurants and all these things, and like, he was really taking me around and like putting me on a game. And I just started to learn so much from him, and I enjoyed our conversations because he always had great insight, and he was always like studying something. He was always very studious, and so like when he would learn, it's like each one teach one. He'd be like, let me come back and drop some gems for Skyra, like let the young Jedi know what's going on, right? But Jay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How did you get your start? Like, I know you gave us like a rundown of your journey so far, but like what specifically started you on your path to where you are right now? Like, was there a certain experience? Was there a certain book? Was there a certain teacher? Like, what got you to this point of gnosis that you're exhibiting right now?
Well, to answer your question, what got me to a point of gnosis was a deep-seated fear of trying to figure out what was going to happen to me, knowing that I was going to die. I knew death was inevitable. It's not anything that you could circumvent. That's for anybody on this plane. And that the idea that, there was going to be some kind of judgment by some supreme deity for whatever actions that I had exhibited while I was in the physical was something that kind of, like I said, it laid siege on my conscience to the point where I tried to search for answers. And I started finding a lot of what appeared to be contradictions in Christianity, which would then lead me segueing into a lot of metaphysical concepts. And eventually, I remember one time after asking many questions, going to churches, I even switched over to Islam for a period to ask imams, deacons, pastors, reverends, even rabbis, trying to figure out what was going to happen. I wasn't getting any answers that were considered satisfactory on a soul level. And it wasn't until I was out in Harlem, and I stopped by this guy who was selling DVDs, and I asked him, who was into metaphysics, I said, what happens when we die? And he told me we go into another dimension. So, of course, somebody still having a Christian programming on him, I looked at him quizzically like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what's another dimension? Like, do they have ice cream over there? Like, is there fire? Brimstone, you understand what I'm saying? Because I wanted him to elaborate, because I was still under a certain impression that, we undergo judgment. And he just told me like, oh, it's just another plane. So, he's there looking at me as if like, dude, did you not know? So I'm looking at him like, what does he mean plane? And I didn't understand. And at that particular time, the way he tried to elaborate, like, oh, there's other dimensions where other beings live or whatever, it depends on your frequency. I started realizing at some point, something went on in my mind, said, no, the reason why I can't understand him is because I'm not on the same program. So I had to dig deep in my mind and say, you know what, in order for you to get to his understanding, I'm going to have to do away with the chip that I had, right, and try to understand whatever chip that he has, if it was a chip at all. After due time, I eventually started studying some DVDs, doing a lot of research, various websites, purchasing a litany of books. I'm talking about a whole host of books. I'm like probably over a little bit over, 3, 4, 5,000 and counting?
Yes.
Like,
I was waiting for you to drop that.
Yeah, major, not that books, are the key determining factor to your level of awareness, but I'm just explaining to you my journey and how I got to where I got, and countless nights of staying up, coffee, researching, even getting out of school instead of focus on my schoolwork. Once I got that out the way, it was like straight to that. And then after some time from studying various people, various philosophies, various ideologies, it got me into what's called the occult, which is beyond the eye, not what most people think it is, or metaphysics. And I really got into the central point of what these people were talking about. In ancient Egypt, they referred to this term as knowing thyself. And knowing thyself, for those who are not aware, is pretty much getting in tune with your true identity as a divine being, not a being that, your identity that in the flesh. Yes, you can know your divine self in the flesh, and that's, what they call the word made flesh, but nonetheless, I'm talking about that pre-incarnation self, the true you that's beyond race, politics, religion, your favorite color, your favorite cereal, and those Jordans that you still had in high school that you can't let go of.
Wait, so Jedi, can we piggyback on that real quick? Because I have a question for you.
Yep, we can.
I'm piggybacking off of everything because I'm picking your brain today.
You good? Go
ahead. I'm giving all the details I can muster in this next hour to hour and a half to drop it for them.
Go ahead.
My question for you is this: What is your understanding or overstanding of the true self?
My understanding or overstanding of the true self, and listen to me carefully, this comes from a place of somebody being on a perpetual journey. So I'm telling you from my vantage point where I am at right now. I may discover more things to add on to that, but from where I'm at right now, from my years of research, is the deepest, most purest essence of you that is beyond the ego. When I say beyond the ego, I mean beyond your human experience, beyond what traumas you had in your previous life, whether you were thrown over a slave ship and eaten by a shark, or you were a wealthy exec that missed out on a good deal and wound up throwing yourself over a bridge. It goes beyond whether a person, and I say this with a very loving heart, whether a person had experienced some type of childhood trauma, be it abandonment, things of that sort. It goes beyond just experiences. It goes into the deepest part of who you are as source or essence or God, the supreme being, whatever you refer to, whatever your background is, and how you are, but in an individualized form, having that connection with the Creator. So take, for instance, did I use this as an example right here? We have a cup here, right? Say there's a stream of water flowing. We all would embody source or God in that stream or flow, a body of water. However, because of ego, because of incarnations, we identify with the cup. So right here, my beloved sister might have a Starbucks cup. Another person might come in and have a series of bodies in Essentia, in a Dasani bottle, Poland Spring, Fiji. That is not the truest identity. The truest identity would be the unalloyed, the very most pure and undiluted aspect of yourself. So it goes beyond your race, your religion, your even likes and don't likes. The non-dualistic aspect of you, the you before you wind up coming down in here. So when I talk about knowing thyself, I'm not talking about knowing things that are contingent upon something. I'm talking about knowing you based upon not the effect, but the true cause, which means that the root. So you saying that your favorite color is red is not dealing with the true self, because your favorite color might be red because of the block that you grew on, or maybe because a particular sneaker or something that you're associated with. Maybe you might have a particular animal that you might gravitate to, but that's based upon this particular experience. We go beyond that. We go with the deepest true essence that is free of any of those things. What makes you free of anything that you could think of humanly and earthly, and getting to the root core of that? That's what I mean with knowing yourself.
That was deep. Thank you for expressing that so eloquently. First of all, you guys, let me say this. If you guys are new to the Jedi, because he does have his own YouTube channel, which is not super active anymore, but
I'll be starting a new one. Go ahead.
He'll be starting a new one, right? But one thing that I want to mention to you guys is that my my biggest challenge in our conversations throughout the years has been keeping up with his vernacular, his vocabulary, because all of these freaking books, right? This man is so smart. Jay, I'm gonna need you, because I was keeping up. I'm gonna need you to simplify a lot of these terms. I know you think in high,
Right.
you know what I mean?
So to simplify that, like when I was using the body of like a body of water, or ocean, or river, basically it's just getting to the true essence of what you are within that huge body, to understand and identify your true self. And that is, I believe that is capable while you're inside that particular bottle, which would be the body, but that would be knowing yourself. It's like getting in tune with who you are, that would have been in that large body of water while you're inside this particular vehicle known as the body, but that particular cup, be it essentia, stuff like that, those are just aspects of what you come here and identify with in your human existence. They don't dictate the true you. The true you cannot be, like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, cannot be burned, cannot be buried, cannot be drowned, and you cannot die. So when you get in tune with your immortal self, when you get in tune with your immortal self, it's just the I am. It doesn't have any identity. There's no need for an identity, because it just is. You know what I mean? So you just go beyond race, politics, religion, likes and dislikes. It doesn't exist in those realms. Those things are very egoic. So when I talk about knowing the self, I'm talking about knowing spirit, the spirit, the thing in you that spirals. You could spiral upward, you could spiral downward. It's just beyond, like I said, those egoic mechanisms. Did I, explicate, make it very simple?
You did.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I mean, I was following, but I'm just thinking about the people who may not be as well versed in some of these concepts.
Right.
Thank you for making that make sense for the people in the back, I have a question for you, because I'm just going to be, honestly, this wasn't meant to be an interview, but I just like the way you explain things. I like your standpoints on things.
Exactly.
And I'm always learning when we have conversations. But something I really want you to touch on, and maybe we can both give our feedback, but knowing you're going to summarize everything I'm already thinking anyway. That's usually how it goes. What is your take on Christ consciousness, but from the standpoint of Christ didn't come here, and by Christ I mean Yeshua. Some people refer to it as Jesus, right? The person. But Christ didn't come here so that we could worship him. He came here so that we could be like him, or he came as an example of what we could be and then some.
Definitely agreed. So I want to start off with Christ consciousness.
Okay.
My take on Christ consciousness is just that, consciousness, which is awareness. So you could step inside of a room with people celebrating Thanksgiving. They have a particular consciousness around them that embodies a particular energy. Same way you step in Congress, there's a particular verbiage or vernacular, they wear particular suits or whatever. When we talk about a consciousness, we're talking about a state of awareness, and we're talking about a spiritual state of awareness. When we speak of Christ, we're talking about being anointed, being endowed with, anointing is like dealing with the innermost essence of like an olive, but we're talking about the innermost essence of your very soul. So when we talk about
going back to that body of water,
that body of water,
okay.
And if we want to get really deep into understanding that, it would be you being in tune and being able to tap into the hydrogen and the two oxygen molecules. There's the two hydrogen and oxygen molecules.
H2 and then so two hydrogens and one oxygen.
I had a D in chemistry, so
I don't even know how I made it through chemistry.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
But anyway, nonetheless, we're talking about getting in tune with the very essence inside of every divine being that lives on this plane. Is, at least that was spawned from the beginning of creation, my understanding, has what's known as Christ consciousness. They're just unaware of it. So this is the consciousness that is going to vivify you, meaning enliven you with the fortitude to exhibit your most divine expression, which is to be the reflection of the Creator. In other words, you tapping into the best version of you. When I say the best version of you, I'm not talking about how well you used to dance. Not being, the best dancer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, or not how well you could dress. It doesn't have anything to do with anything that you acquire in the material realm. When I talk about the best version, we're talking about the best version of you in which you are able to express divinity That's what I mean by Christ consciousness. You understand what I'm saying? So, what was you asked something else pertaining to Christ consciousness? Like,
see, I got lost in the expression. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I know I was saying like your take on Christ consciousness from the standpoint that Christ came as an example of what we can be, not to be worshipped.
I got it. This is where I want to camelback off of what you were talking about. A lot of confusion that takes place in Christendom. Are you allow me to talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Sure.
We're going there.
Yes, I'm glad because my credentials come as somebody who was at some point, I wouldn't say completely raised, but at some point I was caught up into Christianity. So I don't want to come off like, like some type of professor or scholar, but nonetheless, I'm familiar with biblical theology and a lot of things that were spoken about in the Old and New Testament. And from my understanding, from my experience, the being that we know as Jesus the Christ, or what you call Yeshua ben Pandera, which is meaning the son of Pandera, is actually a prophet. There's scriptures that you could go to, whether you go back in Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 15 or chapter 13, where they even spoke about how a prophet was going to be sent among these people. And this being that you know as Yeshua or Jesus was a prophet. The Christ was the divine principle, the light within him. He had tapped into the reflection of God mind. That's what Christ consciousness would be, the mind of the creator. And he was able to speak that divine mind, or the logos or the monad, and be able to enliven other men because he became aware of it. See, when you incarnate, you lose awareness of that. That's what Christianity, they speak about this quote unquote death and there's a resurrection. When you incarnate, you come in and there's a loss of that as awareness. As children, they are endowed with some of these psychic abilities and able to tap in. But as you get older, you get more indoctrinated, more programmed, and you become less in tune with that psychic ability, your divine intuition. Now you're more concerned about your tribal identity, such as your race, your religion, politics, likes and dislikes. And in order for you, like it says in the Bible, in order for you to inhabit the kingdom, which is within, it tells you in the book of Luke that the kingdom is within, which is a mind state, which is in your head. You have to put on a new program and do away with the original program that you came into. Because that program was set up to give you a 3D identity, which is to give you a cartoon version of you massing the true divinity within yourself. And a lot of people tend to think that they're supposed to be worshiping Jesus, who was just an example of that divinity. He was divinity personified, which means that he came out and he was a reflection of what divinity or what God would be like inside the body and the flesh. A lot of people can't distinguish between what the prophet was saying, which was the man in the flesh, versus his divine mind. When the Bible makes examples such as saying Christ walked on water, you've never seen, I've never personally seen, unless you're dealing with a David Blaine, anybody walking on water in actuality. And if he could, that's more power to him. I don't have the money or the finances to go to a school to figure that out. It's considered nugatory for somebody like me. I want something that's going to help me in my personal life other than performing tricks. And I don't say that with humor or sarcasm. What I'm saying is, your divine self is supposed to be able to have dominion over water. So they put together a lot of metaphors to get you to understand concepts. It was like a roadmap that was developed to help a person get back to the original blueprint of the original divinity. The first man that you come in with, Adam, is capable of being subjected to temptations. He eventually undergoes a fall and loses connection with God. And then eventually there's another being that they refer to as Christ, which is one and the same, is a reflection of that divinity that is now raised back up into the awareness. One is subject to loss of awareness. The other one is raising back to that awareness. And the Bible was just pretty much a blueprint of that story, the chronology of what your soul has to undergo in order for you to reach that,
Wow. I want to see, again, with the piggyback, and I'm going back to something you said. So, well said. Thank you for that.
Right.
But I have another question for you.
Sure.
Or let me just say, I want to hear your feedback on this.
Okay.
You mentioned something about programming. We were programmed one way. We have to undo that programming and basically reprogram. I'm guessing the subconscious mind, right? I knew that. I just wanted to say I'm guessing. But what I want to get your feedback on, and it's almost shifting gears a little bit, but it's relative to the word programming. Can you explain the way that you taught me, but can you explain to them what the Matrix, the movie, and the 3D representation, what is that? You can even tie in movies like They Live. You know where I'm going with this.
So, I believe where you're going with this, you just want, the viewers to know exactly what the Matrix is and correlate it with what the movie was trying to convey along with my own particular point.
100%.
So, the Matrix would be pretty much the very world that we live in, which is ideally it could be looked upon as an illusionary construct. So I just want to make this unabundantly clear. A lot of people say, well, I dash my hand against the table and I feel the pain. How is that an illusion? When I say an illusion, I'm talking about something that isn't essentially real in essence. So yes, you experience the pain, but nonetheless you experience the pain through a secondary or tertiary medium, not through the true self. The true self is incapable of pain. You understand what I'm saying? So you're experiencing this pain through a body that's endowed with nerves, and they communicate it to your brain through the nervous system in order to tell you that what you're experiencing. So now you're not experiencing things from the truth directly. You're
like a first-hand perspective.
It's not a first-hand experience. You experience it through secondary and tertiary means. So when I say illusions, I'm talking about things that an illusion is something that doesn't last. It disappears after some time. Your body ideally would be an illusion because you go through you go through prenatal, natal, then you go through youth or whatever they call it, and then geriatrics, you eventually die. Your body is constantly changing whether you can see it or not. You start to age. So what you look like when you were a baby doesn't look like what you were when you were a preteen, neither what you were like a teen, and it wastes away as you get older. Your situations constantly change. Those are illusions. Anything that is reality does true. The truth does not change. Even in the Bible, it tells you worship God in what? Truth and in spirit. Even in Malachi 3:6, I think it's something like that, where it tells you, I am the Lord and I change not. So if the supreme being, or what you refer to as God, doesn't change, then you have to get in tune with the truest self of you that is unchanging. You know what I mean? We're constantly evolving, but a lot of things around us are always changing. You know what I mean? Not just your clothes, not just your lifestyle, not just your food, your circumstances, your age, your opinions, you know what I mean? Your identity, the way you think. Your mind is constantly changing. That already lets you know right there that you are under a program in which you're constantly subject to a series of illusions, because you may be thinking one thing right now and discover something after get illuminated and realize that what you thought before is actually not reality. So you're subject to a series of illusions, and this world that we live in constantly keeps the soul bombarded with a series of illusions in which we get so enthralled and so caught up into, having us going from left to right, back and forth, season to season, never identifying with who we truly are beyond what was bequeathed or bestowed to us from birth. And that's what essentially the Matrix is. It's basically, long story short, some people call it a school, some people call it a prison. I'm not here to tell you what you should think, whether you look at it as a school, because you can learn some things. You could also stay here for the rest of your life and incarnation.
Right.
It's entirely up to you. My bail is paid for, and I'll tell you about that. Long story short, for you Christians, when you do tap into this Christ consciousness, that's your freedom from this Matrix. I mean, if you like coming in different forms, being one person, you could be a homeless person. Next thing you want to come in as a celebrity, by any means, but nonetheless, the whole idea is that this system is designed to keep your consciousness confined to a particular realm that is ideally inconsequential in long term. It's not saying that you can't come into awareness of who you are over a period of time, but eventually you're supposed to outgrow it. You're supposed, even in the school, you're supposed to graduate. In a jail, do a bid, it could be a life sentence, but I mean, who wants to be there? So now you get the concept of what the Matrix is, and the movies were just conveying to you a lot about your true self, which is Neo, the divine feminine aspect, which is Trinity. Which is the logos that's within, the initiate, who is you, Neo being new, Anderson is like the Son of Man. You know, for those of you in the Bible, you're aware of that. And he was incarnated into the Matrix, which is a computerized world. Now, people would say, oh, how is this world a computer? Well, your mind is actually the computer that keeps computing things, because a computer is a program. So, you know, you may call that color over there lavender or blue or white or whatever the case may be. Somewhere else in another country it might be called something else, but nonetheless our programs are similar because we see the same color. We just refer to it a different way, which is another different program. So we're all sharing this program, maybe in a slightly different way with slightly different variations or whatever the case may be.
So would it be like a collective program with individual experiences?
That's what it is, collective programming with individualized experiences. So it would be what would be considered the higher heavenly realm, where we all exhibit the same thing on one accord, and now we're having a similar experience, but we're all on separate accords. So God is supposed to unify, the devil is supposed to separate, ideally.
Right.
So we're given an experience of what it's like to experience individualized or separate consciousness, you know?
Okay. I mean, you made that make sense, and I'm just going back to the movies in my head, that The Matrix 1, 2, and 3. And I remember, this is so funny, so we could actually, I guess, spin to my spiritual awakening. And watching movies like The Matrix definitely sent me on a spiral I wasn't really ready for. Because as a kid, you watch it, you don't fully grasp maybe the concept of like Christ consciousness and how it pertains to that. But as I got older and I rewatched it, it had me thinking like, oh my God, are we trapped in a simulation? Like, are we the Sims in The Sims 4 right now? Like, are we these AI intelligent beings that are becoming sentient? Like, all these questions, right? But what I realized is that anytime that you're experiencing life from this body, you're almost like, it's like your consciousness got transported. Think of it like a digital reality game with the goggles. That's how I kind of perceive it, right? Like you have a real form, which is that body of water, but a cup of that water decided to put on glasses. That's probably a really bad example, but you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
And those glasses have you looking at a virtual world, and you're having these experiences, but they're only subjugated to like your five senses. Like you said, you hit your hand on the table, your nervous system will send shocks through the body to the mind for it to process, because it's all computing information. And I feel like you really made that make sense for the people who are listening. I'm intending that this episode, for those who are aligned with the information, like you guys are really like tuning in and you're like sitting back like, whoa, this is exactly what I needed to hear today, you know? But do you have anything that's in the back of your mind that you want to kind of like elaborate on?
I do want to make something that has been on my mind about for those of you who are struggling, because I struggled one time as a Christian trying to figure out, is this the devil that's trying to tempt me from Christian doctrine?
I'm gonna take a sip of tea for that.
Yeah, or is this the actual reality? Because I struggled trying to figure out when people were presenting these themes about us living in the Matrix. And I said, oh, is this what Paul would refer to as doctrine of demons, right? And it took me to actually study my Bible, as Paul said, to study to show thyself approved. And when I studied, I came across a verse in 2 Corinthians, I think 4:4, where he said, and the God of this world had blinded the mind so people wouldn't obey this gospel. And I almost spit out my tea that day when I went back and read it. Because I had to ask myself this question. What did Paul mean that the God of this world had blinded the minds of the people? So that, I started putting a lot of things together, and I started realizing that if according to the scripture, according to most religious texts, that the supreme being God is the giver of life, right? Why is this world that we presume allegedly was created by the supreme being is so predicated upon destruction, not only of the self as it disintegrates, but on other beings? Everything needs something else in order for it to survive. Even whether you decide to say, oh, you're going to go vegan or vegetarian, a lot of people are not aware, but if you get with gurus who are really in tune, they would tell you that even plants have consciousness. You just may not be able to hear the screams, because that will require you to get into higher levels, where they're able to tap into telepathy. They even have articles about that. I'll see if I can put it up to you, give it to you so you could put it up on the channel for those that really want to do some inquiry.
Gotcha.
Even plants experience pain. So that means that your survival is predicated on another being's destruction. And I became concerned about my very existence, where in one way, shape, or form, I would have to exploit another being. Even the person who had to spend their time toiling to go and get this stuff for me has to go through blood, sweat, and tears to get it. Whether it be, wages that are not worth, what they should be paid, or they could barely get by. But nonetheless, everything else has to survive off of destroying or the exploitation of another. And I found it very sinister. Another thing that I want to point out to, for those of you Christians who might think that this might be considered doctrine of demons, is that you have to ask yourself, why would you need saving from a world that a God allegedly created? And then Paul is telling you that the God of this world has blinded the mind. So now you have to ask yourself, why would this supreme being, right, put you into a situation where you're going to be subject to do things that are antithetical or against the nature of God, and this God created that very vessel? It doesn't make any sense. What do you need saving from? What do you need salvation from? How could a God that's logical, endowed with reason, love, and compassion, also give you a body that he knows that this body is needing sexual urges, after some point in time? You're going to need food, and now you're kind of caught in this gauntlet. What's the name of that movie? It was a movie where everybody had to do whatever they had to do to survive.
Hunger Games or something like
Hunger
that?
Games. It's kind of like a Hunger Games type of scenario. And now you're running around here committing quote-unquote sin or missing the mark. And you're pissing off this deity. And now he's subjecting you to things such as karma. And now he's telling you that he's offering you the only tool. I mean, it's no different from, what they say that the government does with the Hegelian dialectic, where it's like, they create a problem and then give you the solution when they want, the masses to fall into a particular agenda ideology. But nonetheless, you would have to ask yourself these questions. Does this world really seem like a world that is created by a very loving and benevolent creator? I mean, you could just look at nature and see how savage nature is. Nature, you could see a deer giving birth to her cubs, and you just see a predator such as a cheetah come and ravish right there while she's in the middle of birth. And we're talking about a God that tells you not to kill, not to steal, but everything about nature is antithetic. You're subject to disease. There's so much warfare. So you have to ask yourself a lot of questions and then begin to make connections. Paul spoke about these quote-unquote gospels to try to get people into a loving state, because he even told you that a carnal mind is an enemy of God. I think that's in Romans 6 and 7 or Romans 8 and 6. Somebody put that in the comment section just to verify. It's been a while. I've been reading so many texts, so just bear with me. But if a carnal mind is an enemy of God, who created that mind? Because you, from my understanding, you didn't remember that signing up and saying, hey, I'll come down there and just come and do this, or whatever the case may be. You didn't create your own brain. So how did you get into this situation, and why is your memory erased? A lot of people, those of you who do believe in past lives, why would you, because people talk about lessons that are learned, but why are you coming in here and you're, going through these lessons and your memory is erased? Imagine me going to school and I'm learning biology, and then as soon as I take a quiz, the professor says they have to erase the test scores over, and I have to take it all over again. How am I supposed to learn? So you have to question the nature of what you're in and question everything. Any religion that's going to teach you not to question the very God is teaching you to remain ignorant, because if you're dealing with a just and loving God, from my understanding, that God has no problem with being on trial, because the truth, it wears no mask. You know what I'm saying? An innocent person doesn't mind answering questions. It's like, listen, I just wasn't there. If you feel like, you have any other inquiries, go check the camera. So if you feel like you're caught up in religion and you're in your mind, you're thinking that God is telling you to question that, you have to actually really ask whether that's God or whether that's taking place in your mind. Because a lot of people in Christianity, the reason why they can't cross over is because some of these things are in their subconscious mind, but a lot of the time, the programming of saying that you can't question God is what stops them from going in and saying, hey, you know what, let me give this a second look.
I want to, you know where I'm probably going to go with this, but my mom. So she's heavily into Christianity.
That's correct.
And I'm not putting you on the chopping block, mommy. I'm sorry. I just want to use this as a very valid and realistic example. But I see in our conversations the curiousness that she has. She has the propensity to expand her awareness. And there's a little bit of a secret desire. I call it a secret desire because of what you just said. there's a programming that she has that tells her if she questions the nature of what she's been taught, she's going against God, she's sinning. But you know what, Jay, do me a favor, right? Let's dive into the concept of sin, because you mentioned it earlier and you gave a little bit of a synopsis. You was like, it's, turning away from God. But can you explain like what we used to talk about as far as what the true definition of sin is, not from the religious perspective, but the true essence of the word?
Okay. So to your mom, I'm going to put her on the chopping block because I don't live with them. But sin, sin is pretty much you missing the mark. And when we say missing the mark, when you're in tune with Christ consciousness, you're endowed with the mind of Christ, which is also a reflection of the mind of, the Most High God. When you miss a mark, you are basically acting on your own volition, devoid of the voice or the reasoning or the intuition of the Creator. So presuppose if, for instance, we went into Starbucks today, right? And, somebody came and asked me, hey, what did she ask me to buy her?
Like breakfast or something,
right?
Yeah.
And let's say deep down inside, my intuition says, you know what, that person is struggling, you have it, they really need it, they want food and not drugs. And my intuition says purchase it for her, but my ego, which is my shadow self, which is my lower self, that is truly the devil, because it's giving me duality. It's giving me an alternative mind from the mind of the Creator. One, duality, diabolos, or to abolish. You're abolishing the mind of the Creator within yourself, and you're choosing your own thing. No different from Lucifer. It's being able to separate yourself from divinity and being able to choose your own way. And that's where sin comes in. So if I decided to say, yo, you know what, my intuition told me to get it for her, but I said, you know what, freak that, I'm going to keep my little bit of change because, I don't know, I just wanted to spend it on some popcorn or, some bubble gum or whatever the case may be. And now she goes without a meal. I've committed sin. Sin doesn't always have to be just only things what you do. It takes place in your relationship with the Creator. Your thoughts are sinful. You understand what I'm saying? And now, obviously, you can't help that because you're inside of a body which has a mind of its own. You know
that
what I mean?
Animalistic mind.
The animalistic mind. So, like as Paul said, like unreasoning animals. He spoke about that. So a lot of the time when we commit sin, we just think like, well, if I don't do it, it's not considered sin. By the mere fact that you have the idea, or it lets you know that you're in constant struggle. This is why Paul said that when he talked about salvation, he said, we're just narrowly, you know what I'm saying? He said, seek your salvation with fear and trembling, because nobody's doing this perfect. It's a constant struggle for you to be a divine particle trapped inside of an animalistic body, because human beings are nothing but intellectual animals. You know what I mean? We have conversations and communicate just like them, but we use word or dialect. Whales might use it, telepathy, wolves might do it. Everything has its own way of being able to communicate, in whether it's in the herd form or whatever the case may be. We reproduce just like them. We need rest just like them. We have mob psychology just like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wolves are like, yo, this is my clique. Just like whether it be gangs, people who are caught up in ethnic or racial or national politics.
Even just like simplify it, right? High school cliques.
I mean,
it's like this group of friends. We're in band. We're the techies. We're the cheerleaders. We're the football players.
And don't think it's exclusive to just your age, because it's still taking place in politics when you're still caught up in a particular political party, and anybody with common sense knows that there's nothing perfect about their political party. And I will blatantly tell you that. I don't care what party you pick, there's going to be something about that you're like, I don't quite agree. Like maybe this side I would be with that one, but overall I like these. So if you're already dealing with something that's not conducive or not perfect, you're just setting a way to create more havoc for the next person. And that right there within itself is not within divinity. And I think that a lot of the time we wind up getting controlled because they know about our animalistic inclinations and how by default our inner child wants to develop a degree of security. And the ego is the one that kind of gives that whisper and says, I'll provide that security. Somebody could do harm to you, and because you don't want to exhibit that vulnerability again, you develop a coping mechanism, or you shield yourself, because the ego is nothing it's just like a wall. It's there to like help guard and protect you.
It's a protective mechanism.
It's a protective mechanism, but the very thing that could protect you could also keep you locked in. So you have to know when to allow your higher self or your Christ conscious to lead you and when you should allow that. Take for instance the movie The Terminator. Do you mind if I go into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
The movie The Terminator was very key in understanding the relationship with the higher self, which was the little boy John. I remember he had on, this was years ago I watched, he had a black shirt but I think a yellow sun. He was supposed to be like the Christ.
Okay.
And he represents the Christ when it's in Christ consciousness, when it's in infancy. You know, you still got to go through the development,
the growth
and maturation,
phases.
right? And Sarah, which in Hebrew means noble princess, she represents the soul. That's where, you know, your higher self incarnates or is inhabiting like an embryo, and it has to develop. So she's there. He's born on the scene. If you notice in the first movie, before he was born, the Terminator, which is the ego, because he's a program like your mind. That's where the ego, everything gets processed through the mind. He was looking to terminate or kill Sarah Connor, basically to repress the soul essence. In the second part, he actually, what he winds up doing is he winds up protecting Sarah and the boy once the boy was born on the scene. So once we give birth to that higher self or that inner divinity, that Christ consciousness, your ego or your shadow self, or what you would call the Satan, is actually there to serve you if you know how to apply the divine will appropriately. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you, because you hit this right on the head, right? But this sounds a lot to me like integration. What would you, well, let me ask you on a personal level. How do you best integrate your egoistic mind with your higher mind? Like, what does your process or your methodology look like?
Well, first of all, in order for you to integrate something, you have to be in tune with the essence of both of them.
Okay.
You know, so
not shaming the ego and not only running with the higher mind.
Right. So it stems from a point of being able to, and I quote the great Sister Myra Moss. She said this. She said, you don't try to blend energy, you have to harmonize them. You understand what I'm saying? So when you harmonize something, there is an equal balance and an equal give and take between the two.
The yin and the yang?
The yin and the yang, there's a mutual understanding. So if you're in a relationship, right, and then, you know, you're the wife and you have the husband, right? It's okay if one generally takes the leading role, but the energy has to be harmonized where there's an agreement. When the other person decides, like, no, this is just how things go, and now that becomes an abuse of power. So there's no harmony there because there's no mutual agreement and there's no balance. Like, hey, you know what? I'll take the lead, but every now and then I want your advice in this particular thing. There's a natural ebb and flow.
Right.
And what happens is, people nowadays, I notice in the metaphysical community, they shame the ego instead of understanding the nature of the ego. And your ego is actually your very power to enact divine will. So when they spoke about Jesus being on this donkey, or excuse me, Christ being on the donkey, the higher self, or you, the initiate Jesus, endowed with the higher self, you also have a lower self, symbolic of the donkey. And the donkey is the very thing the very tool that gets you through your path, as he was on his way to Jerusalem?
Jerusalem, yeah.
Yep. So he's on his way to Jerusalem. He's on his way to enlightenment. But before you get there, you can't do it without having a physical body, because you not being in the physical body, you're not going through the experiences. So nonetheless, you have to learn how to subject your physical body to the will of the Creator and use it as your power. For instance, in order for you to do the journey, you still need a physical body. Your physical body, me using my intellect and using my divine mind to write a book on how to get through this, I'm still using my divine self to work through that lower self, which is the donkey, to get the work done.
Both of them are in unison, like you said, the harmony.
Both of them, that's why they say mind, body, and soul. They don't disavow with the body, because the body is the vehicle in which, you know what I mean? You can sit here and say, oh, you know, vehicles, emit CO2 and carbon emission and all that other stuff. But nonetheless, if you don't use that vehicle, you're never going to get to your destination. We're not in the perfect realm. You should know that by now. That's why you need salvation from it. The whole basis is to be able to get out of the doggone matrix. Because I hear a lot of people, and I hear this so much, you know, I'm going left for a second, but I'm going to drive it right, and then we get back to center. A lot of people are talking about the age of Aquarius, which is the age of enlightenment, right? But a lot of people are not talking about really wanting to come back. So we're talking about going into this golden era, but nobody wants to be back here. That should already tell you that this is something that you're supposed to learn from and graduate and leave.
And create space and room for the new souls that want to come and do the same thing.
And I have to make that abundantly clear because people are just so caught up into we're going into the age of Aquarius, not understanding that when you look at all the zodiac signs, none of them exhibit perfectness.
Right.
Aquarius has a high vibrational Aquarius, the humanitarian, the rebellion, the inventor, things of that nature. But you also can use Aquarius energy for low vibrational sociopathic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, we're allegedly in the age of Aquarius, right? That's groups and collectives, 11th house. But how many people use that in the low vibrational say where you see dudes in the hood, they get together and be like, yo, let's come together. That's Aquarius energy, the groups and collectives, the 11th house. And they say, you know what, we're going to go do and smash and grab. And I have nothing against anybody who wants to do just smash and grab. I just can't do the jail time. So more power to anybody.
But you know what, too?
Right.
The other side of Aquarius is that revolutionary, that rebellious energy.
Right.
So that could be, like you said, let's do a smash and grab.
Right.
They're operating from the lower frequency of an Aquarian type vibe.
Right. So, and for the sake, because somebody might be pissed off. I got this chain through that smash and grab.
I mean, listen, to each his own. We're not promoting smash and grabbing.
We're not promoting. I'm just for the sake of however
relativity.
The only reason why we're saying frequencies is because of the consequences that come with it. So I don't want to make it seem like we're shaming you just because you got that nice good old chain. Because shoot, I might want to take a video with you watching one. Nonetheless, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about the energy and the consequences that come with it because everything has dharmic and karmic consequences.
The law of
that's
what's that?
That's the law of Tahuti.
Which one is it? Not the law of rhythm per se. It's like the law of cause and effect.
The law of cause and effect. There you go. So, nonetheless, because I mean, there's consequences for even doing quote unquote good or charitable things without thinking.
Yeah, discernment.
Discernment is a very important thing, and I have to elaborate because I just recently watched a video on YouTube, and I'm gonna drive this home because I know you want to talk about something. But watch this guy, a state trooper. Long story short, he happened to see a guy who was pulled over in a Benz. You could go look it up on YouTube. And the guy who was pulled over in a Benz, obviously he had some type of mechanical difficulties. He was looking for some help. Unbeknownst to the state trooper, that guy had just murdered a paramedic for that same vehicle about a day before, later, 2 days before.
Wow.
So now he looks like he's out there stranded. It's in the dead. It was dark. It looked like it was like 11, 12 o'clock, maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, possibly pitch black out.
Wow.
The guy pulls over, and the guy, the way he's walking, he just looks suspect. He has his hoodie on. He's trying not to look at the camera on the dashboard. And the officer rolls down the window and told him that he was going to get him some help. The guy's conveying, he's having some mechanical failures. The officer vows to take him to the gas station and maybe to go get his car fixed. And the guy shot him right in the middle of his sentence.
The officer?
No, the guy.
No, the guy shot the officer.
The guy came and shot the officer right while he was telling him he was getting help in the mid-sentence.
Wow.
So, and I have to make that abundantly clear because a lot of people just think that, high vibrational, low vibrational, if it's not in divine alignment, you're still out of alignment. You know what I'm saying? Basically, my point is you could be driving down the highway and saying, I'm not going left, I'm going to stay on the right lane. And that right lane will take you on a detour onto a whole nother highway that you should have never been on. You understand what I'm saying? This is the whole point of what I was talking about with Christ consciousness, know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
Let that inner voice lead you.
The inner voice has to lead you. Anything that doesn't lead you there, it's what leads to my point. What you were talking about is sin, missing the mark. You may have a narcissistic ex that relationship served its purpose. It was there to show you particular lessons about what's considered toxicity, and you stay there because you just feel like you just want to work on it, or you're allowing your ego or your lower self like, no, but this person looks so good, and all your emotions get into you, your mind get into you, and your spirit is not all the illusionary self, because that's what the lower self is just a series of, it deals with everything illusionary, and you don't want to deal with the reality. Like, as much as I think this person has a nice body, they got nice teeth, this, that, and the third, they're charismatic, but they could be a certified piece of garbage, or let me not even say that. They could just be downright toxic on the inside and needing a lot of work, and you decide to stay there because you're dealing with your lower self and what you think might or what you feel might be appealing, and now you're caught up in a situation that's a form of sin because you're not listening. You understand what I'm saying? You cannot say that you're a child of God and you don't hear that voice. I hear a lot of people that say, oh, I'm a child of God, and and they're like asking questions like, well, you look at their marriage, you look at their relationships, and everything about it is not a testament to what true divinity is. And I'm not saying that you can't have people who struggle. We're all inside physical vessels and we're all going to have struggles, but you can tell when there's a degree of harmony within a particular relationship. I've seen people who say they're in a church and everybody around them is, you know what I mean, like caught up into something that they just shouldn't be caught up into. I mean, like, you know, again, I'm not judging, but some of these people are facing like 3-4 different murder charges. You know what I'm saying? They're caught up in like, you know, kidnappings, runaways,
all types
of things that are just, and then this is not a judgment, but all types of things that are antithetical to people in that particular life. So you have to question yourself and ask, what are the reasons for you doing it? Did your intuition tell you to do it, or are you doing it because you think that it's right? Thinking it right and then knowing are two different things. That's what we talk about of gnosis. Gnosis, Gnosis, is the state or quality of being in a state of illumination and having that knowing. It's not a thinking, it's not a believing, it's a knowing. There's been times where people have asked me for change before and I just give it just because I thought it was nice and very Christian-like. Now, after me getting into this state, there's certain times where I come and I know offhand, it's like the spirit is already telling me that person has a drug addiction, do not give it. You understand what I'm saying? That's a knowing. Like, you're like, I don't care about this, that, and the third. Something is just telling me this is just not right. You know, like how in The Wizard of Oz, they told to follow the yellow brick road. You have to listen to that inner solar plexus, that gut feeling. A lot of time when you ignore gut feelings,
that's when you end up in some shit.
You end up in some things that you really do not know. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yo, do you have like the thing that bleeps out curses? I know you said your mom was watching this.
Oh, you know what? No, I was just saying that she doesn't actually watch my
podcast. Okay.
Isn't that so sad? That mom, that's a whole other thing. Her religious beliefs will not allow her to watch my content.
Right.
And I'll sum it up with that. So it's okay. If she ever does watch it, she'll be okay. She'll be good.
Could I camel back on what you just said?
Yeah.
It's crazy because a particular program could prevent you from getting the very thing that you need to liberate you or even understand the very thing that you claim to study or follow by. So I noticed that, and this is not an attack on anybody. This goes for Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Taoists, whatever your beliefs are. You can profess to have a particular religious belief, but if you are not liberated from the threshold of carnality, and when I say carnality, I'm not meaning that you're not going to eat anymore or anything like that. I'm talking about just basic addictions where you know that you just find yourself inhabiting lower realms in which you feel like you're trapped and you're not free. You don't feel as if like you have to constantly be dictated and told what to do by a particular text. At some point when you reach a level of illumination, you're supposed to be free of any type of book. You know what I mean? The voice of the Supreme Being is supposed to guide you. So regardless of whatever your religion is, if you find yourself constantly judging people for their mishaps, you know, I've seen people who are part of religion and they say, oh, you know what, this person is a doggone demon. And you may not have the gnosis to know that that person is going through their particular rites of passage and you're judging them. And that person comes back 2 years later and they supersede you in your faith. It happens like that because it happened to me. There were people that were judging me when I was out there hanging around, you know, people who were lost. You know, these people were caught up in, you know, whether they were gang men, you know, drug dealing or whatever the case may be. I still had, you know, hung out with these people, whatever the case may be. I myself might have been out there drinking or whatever the case may be. And some people might have judged me and said, oh, you know what, he's never going to be anything, because that was a common theme with people telling me that, including some of my parents. And now my actual father is somebody who came to me over some time trying to get answers about life and existence when he was the very person that used to shun and tell me that I was stupid and I was never going to be.
Wait, did he really?
Yes, he did. He sure did. He was telling me this at the tender age of like between 6, 8, and 10.
Okay.
It was a common theme that I was going to be a fool, that I was stupid, I was incapable, and you know, even with me asking these questions, that I wasn't going to get the answers. And now, you know, he's one of those people. I mean, we no longer speak anymore, but you know, as I matured, he was coming to me for answers. So never disavow with anybody. Actually, some of the greatest gurus actually sometimes come from some of the most lowly situations, because in order for you to really be able to teach somebody, you have to be able to inhabit some of the lowest realms to understand the very people that you need to heal and what they're going through.
so true.
How could somebody sit there and tell you about how to keep yourself warm out in the cold when they never been outside when it's 15 degrees? You understand what I'm saying?
Jay, you know what that reminds me of, right? Because we were talking about the universal laws, the laws of Tahuti earlier. And I had mentioned the law of rhythm, trying to get my mind to grasp what we really were talking about, which was the law of cause and effect. But the law of rhythm, for some reason, it's in here, it's ruminating as we're talking. And what I kind of just thought about just now was, like you said, some of the you know, most divine gurus, or like the most high vibrational gurus that walk the face of this planet, they came from some of the most lowly places. And the law of rhythm states, like, the degree to which the pendulum swings one way, it has to swing back equally the opposite direction.
Right.
So for that rock bottom moment that a person hits, that potential to go skyrocket to the top of the mountain is so there.
Right.
You know, it's accessible.
Right. And that's being able, for those of you Christians out there, when Adam supposedly took this forbidden fruit, or the fruit is a symbol of getting in, when you eat into an apple, your senses are activated. So when we talk about senses as sensations, when he quote unquote symbolically took of this fruit, it was getting in tune with the lower senses as opposed to tasting of a higher realm. And what happened was, now he was able to get in tune with what it's like to have a realm without God. So he got not only the yin, but he also got the yang. And what did they say in the scriptures? They said, now you become God because now you know good and evil. You understand what I'm saying? But it never said that there was any, it never said that it was wrong. Because he never said, you know, in the Bible, he said, now they know good and evil.
Right.
Which they became God. So how could you sit there and be able to heal somebody and you're not in tune with God? Because God, you have to be able to know both sides of the spectrum.
Well, think about even the concept of healing. You don't heal things that are already perfect. You heal the imperfections. So for you to be able to even help a person with healing, they have to, or you have to be able to dabble in both sides.
Of course.
Because healing is a product of that dualistic nature.
Right.
The perfection, or the perfected energy or essence of God, of Christ, doesn't need healing. It is the healing force that comes to balance out that other side.
So what the intermediary is doing is actually showing the person how to get in tune with God by showing them how they're out of sync with God. And that's a form of healing, because now they get to see the mirror and see you are stuck in addictions because every time you go to this addiction, you're using it to try to get to God, where you feel like that happiness. But you're not doing it the right way. You're doing it the wrong way, which is why it's causing your finances. It's causing you to spend money, whether it be on drugs, alcohol, porn, and things of that sort, of certain habits or whatever the case may be. Because these people are trying to get to that connection with God. That's the whole point. Even some of the most narcissistic people, a lot of time they spend their time smoking and drinking because they're trying to get to that. A lot of people on this earth are trying to get back to creator or source, and they're just doing it in the wrong ways. That is a form of sin, where you're bumping your head, like, you know, you get it. A person might smoke and now they feel like, you know, their worries, their trauma is now on the back burner. Christ does that way. He said, follow me, you know what I'm saying? And my burden is equal.
My yoke, what did he say? Cast your yoke upon me, my burden is light, or something like that.
My burden is light, or whatever the case may be. And he's going to cleanse all the sin away. There's a lot of people that actually want to exhibit and feel that. They just don't know where to go. They don't know a lot of people. They don't know genuine people who are actually experiencing it. And the people who are going to people who they think are experiencing, they're going to people who have the illusion of experiencing it.
The illusion.
Some of these pastors, deacons, rabbis, shramis, whatever you want to call it, these supposed authorized figures or leaders in the spiritual realm, some of them are not really truly on the path like you think that they are, and they have mass followings, many people that are coming to them and trying to get them to show them the way. But even Christ said, you know, oh, you lawyers and you scribes, how could you show people the kingdom of heaven and the door shut up to yourself? You know what I'm saying?
It's giving show and tell at this point.
You have to be able to exhibit and experience the loftiest and highest levels of bliss, because happiness, you know, you could oscillate and vacillate in and out of happiness, but bliss, joy, that's something that you cannot be robbed of. You understand what I'm saying? That's why he spoke about having that pillar in the kingdom. You know, these are things that a true leader is going to have, and they're going to be able to show it to you. And they're also, a true leader should be able to tell you how they were able to make it out themselves. If they're making it seem like they didn't go through it, chances are you shouldn't be following them, because how are they going to tell you how to get out of it and they haven't had a dose? Even in the Bible, it tells you that. So it tells you, wasn't it the serpent that allegedly got Adam and Eve kicked out? But why does it tell you in the Bible that that same serpent is the very thing that's going to heal the Israelites and that was supposed to be raised? It tells you that when a person gets bit by a serpent or a snake, a lot of the time they use the very venom from that snake, and they call it anti-venom, to heal the snake bite. So a person really has to know what it's like in order for you to lead you out of it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be the same exact addiction, but if you've been in addiction before, you know what it feels like, you know why you constantly go to it, and then you'll be able to tell the person, you're constantly going to that because of this and this and this.
That's true wisdom.
There you go.
That's true wisdom.
And then with true wisdom comes understanding. Those two are like twins, you know? So if a person doesn't have wisdom, they also don't have understanding.
Right.
If they're presenting you understanding, like they understand something, and they're not showing you the wisdom, they don't have the prerequisite. You
to really
like
deliver fully
exactly.
what you're looking for. Let me tell you what that reminds me of. So I was about 8 years old. I was going to church every Sunday with my mom. And my mom had, at the time, I was probably about 6 or 7 when she read this book, but she was drilling it into my head around this time. And it was this book, I want to say, called The Rapture.
Okay.
And if it wasn't called The Rapture, it was about the rapture. But nonetheless, that book terrified me. Like, it had me shook. And I remember I used to have dreams. And I told you, like, I dream certain things. But I remember this one dream that I had back then, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I woke up and I was terrified, and it was literally the day that we were going to church, or like maybe 2 days before. So I told my mom about it, and I asked her, like, Mommy, what does this dream mean? It was very, very relative to her explanation of the rapture. But she was like, you know what, we're going to go to church, and we're going to, you know, have you talk to the pastor and have her explain. It was a woman. Have her explain, you know, because pastors are supposed to be divinely orchestrated by God, and they're put here as a medium between God and the people, right? So I remember I sat through the whole Sunday service. I was ready. I'm like, I need this question answered, because the degree to which I was curious was also the degree to which I was fearful because of the intensity behind the dream. So I get to her office afterwards and I say, hey, Pastor, like, I can't remember her name, but I was like, can I, sit down with you and talk to you about a dream that I had? So she's like, sure, honey, come on in. We close the door. I'm sitting down. I break the dream down word for word as best as I could remember. And it was a pretty straightforward dream. Like, we knew what it was about. You know what I mean? This lady had absolutely no answers for me. Like, I'm not gonna lie, she started BSing me, and I could tell, and I was 8 years old. I could tell, I'm like, this lady has no clue what this dream means. That was my first experience dealing with the person who I was told was appointed by God to help and, lead the sheep. But when I had a direct issue that I brought to this person who was appointed by God, they had no answer for me. So that kind of, I think from that young age started my trajectory of like, okay, what is the truth? Like, I remember that was my question, like, what is really the truth? Because I don't feel like I have access to the complete and whole truth. Now, I'm not gonna lie, they say be careful what you wish for because you're gonna get it, right? It took me through, what do you call that? Like a temporary psychosis when you first go through a spiritual awakening. That, and then I got to this point now where I have this understanding of like, okay, my true power, a better grasp on my sense of self, my true self, right? But going back to what you said, that pastor didn't have the wherewithal because she lacked the experience to really deliver to me the solution or the resolution I was looking for when I came to her with like the dream interpretation questions. And so gnosis is really powerful in that sense because you can't really help a person go through what you've never been through, going back to addictions. If I've never been addicted to a certain drug, I can't help a drug addict and tell them like, listen, this is how you navigate this. Or like you said, you're even addicted to this particular thing because of A, B, and C. Again, I don't have those credentials. So I think it's really important. It's funny, like you've been very intuitive with this conversation because I would be thinking things and you would start like touching on it a little bit. But I want to go back to what you were talking about. You started naming characteristics of the enlightened person. So can you break down in a simple way, right? Like, what do you feel like is a telltale sign, not a red flag, but a green flag of a person who is enlightened or a person who is tapped into that Christ consciousness, that Christos consciousness? Like, What does that look like to you?
Okay, so as simply put, without, getting too crazy about it, a person who's enlightened, when you encounter them, there's going to be a knowing. Buddha once said this, right? Buddha said, don't follow anybody. He said, don't even follow me. Or he said, don't listen to anybody. Don't even listen to me. He said, only listen to whatever your soul knows to be true. That means that we're endowed with intuition, where there's like a gut feeling, because you remember, the creator is truth. If you have the creator in you, there's something that you're just going to know that's the truth. And when you hear that, when you feel that, that's when you follow. And you know how you know when here are some signs that you may want to look for. This is not, the end all be all. There may be a greater list that I'm not thinking of right now. But the truth is going to set you free, number one. So when you find yourself not bound by things that you see many people around you bound by, that might be a telltale sign. Because even in Matthew 7:13, he tells you, or was it 12 to 13, he tells you, enter ye straight at the gate, for narrow is the way and broad is the path that leads on to destruction. This is a narrow journey. So it's, it's going to take certain individuals that are going to have to tread the path. You want to find yourself in a state of peace. If the message doesn't leave you feeling at peace, chances are you should question it. If it teaches you to become more arrogant, more tribal, more sinister, more selfish. And when I say selfish, I'm not saying that you have to give everything that you have, but I'm talking about, like, you could just feel when that shadow self comes in, because you feel a lot more heavier. You're supposed to be as light as a feather.
Right. Like
in my, you know what I mean? So when you get messages and they don't help you liberate, they don't help free you, chances are you might want to question who you're listening to and what's being conveyed. You know what I'm saying?
So let's take it a step further now, because I like that. Thank you for that. But now I want to hear from you. Like, what do you, how do I phrase this? What would you describe the feeling as when a person themselves are on the true path to enlightenment? Like, not so much dealing with the person who's trying to lead and you want to decipher whether or not they're on the path, but once the person ascends and they become the person who's walking the path, what are some green flags or some synchronicities or signs that they might pick up on to know, like, oh, I am walking the path?
Well, I can tell you, I can't tell you about anybody else. I can tell you from my experience.
No, sis.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Because remember, this is all about experience. Don't just listen. Go through the door. That's the key thing that I want, your viewers to know. But one thing that I knew, I experienced a certain effulgence, something transpersonal that took me beyond what the person that I thought I knew. So there was like a death to my old self, and the new experience that I took on or embraced, and not even took on, it was just like, it was like I was being disrobed, because it was already in me. It was just the revelation was there.
Right. The illusion had to shatter.
The illusion had to shatter. I felt not only a degree of serenity, of peace, and a degree of freedom, but a spiritual sovereignty. Sovereignty, a lot of people don't know, is like, I don't know. You know what the key thing that I think most people need to be aware of? The experience is inexplicable. You know why? Because God cannot be explained. God is inexplicable. You understand what I'm saying? It was something that was so majestic, so liberating, so freeing, but yet at the same time so empowering that I just couldn't put it into words. And that's when I knew that I was closer and tapping onto that garment of what the higher self was. You understand what I'm saying? It was letting me go of things that I felt like I needed to help validate me. So basically, I had on fig leaves, and metaphorically, fig leaves would be like, identities when I'm not in tune with the creator. So my fig leaves became like, my job that I was working before, getting paid $100,000. It's like, all right, you know what? This is something right here. Or, the kind of clothes that I was wearing became another fig leaf. Making sure that I had my, I was always properly groomed. And there's nothing wrong with beauty, but I'm saying when these things become an identity, where to the point where you can't walk out your house during an emergency because, you got to carry out a whole bag of, whatever beauty design stuff or this, that, and the third. I'm not saying not to be hygienic. I want this to be within due parameters. But I'm saying is when you find yourself bound by something to where it becomes your identity, chances are there's a problem. and I became free of a lot of things that became my identity. Like right now, I'm not even properly groomed, but you see, what did I tell you before? That was just like, I'm just going, and you know me, back in high school, you see me
you was, I'm not, let me sidebar real quick, you guys. When I met this man, he was drippy, he was fly, he had such, still do, it's only when you choose to embrace it though.
Right.
The most beautiful masculine aesthetic to how he dressed and carried himself, hair always what would you call that, like
properly groomed,
like trimmed and everything, because I'm thinking like you can't say like a woman like hair done up or whatever, but like
it's still done.
It's still done, right? This man, when he came to class, presentable, on point. I'm like, oh, I like those sneakers, oh, I like that coat, oh, I like, every day I had something to say about the Jedi, every day. But I think I've watched you over time since then, disrobe, like you said. And so now you still get, it's almost like being in the world but not being of it.
Correct.
You still, whenever you feel like it, you can enter that stage or that that essence of like, oh, I want to dress up today, or I want to put on something that makes me feel good today. But it's not this necessity kind of construct in your mind where it's like, I can't leave the house until I look like this, or I can't go to a podcast until I look like this.
Right.
I literally spoke to this man a couple days ago. He was like, look, I'm not gonna hold you, I didn't get no haircut. Like, I'm not even feeling it right now. But I said, listen, come as you are. That's already his vibe. He showed up as he is. And look, this is a beautiful experience we're having, Because it's not about the outside. The 3D is very fundamental. We just kind of need the 3D to get through the school of life. I'm going to refer to it as a school for sake of optimism.
Right.
But, to make it through this journey we're all walking, you got to be in the physical. But again, going back to being in the world but not of it, I feel like, well, you know what? I think you'll be a better deducer of that concept. What do you feel like is the key principle of being in the world but not of the world?
Being in the world, of the world, is just pretty much being in the moment, so you can enjoy things from time to time. Like, like right now we just had like, a nice tasty ginger latte. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't say that, this is, it's Starbucks and, associate all the politics with it, So anybody who's, from whatever part of the country and feels like the people who own this, that we shouldn't support. I didn't get too enmeshed in that. It was just in the moment here. We're going to Starbucks. I went and got what I got. So it's like I'm in the world. I don't have a choice on, there's some choice, but the choices are very limited. It's not like I own my own coffee shop. I don't have anything against Starbucks or, whatever the case may be. But when I say be in the world and not of the world, is living in the moment and being able to accept the abundance on a physical level and the things that come with it, but not being so enmeshed in it. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, like for instance, like, I'm enjoying, I got my little boots on, I got my shades on, but at the same time, I'm like, if these things these shades got lost, I wouldn't care. It's not like it's gonna ruin my day. Like, I'm having a bad day a whole week, and it's just like, oh, I gotta reorder these. You know what I'm saying? Like, or such a thing where it's just like, I missed out on a party, and it's like, oh, my day becomes so miserable because I missed out on that one party. And it's not so much missing out on a party, it's the reason behind it. If I missed out on the party because I felt like I wanted to be the center of the attention in that party, now I know that I'm caught up in the world. You know what I'm saying? When we talk about the world, we're talking about the matrix and the vibration with the matrix. That is known as, in Hinduism, it's known as Maya meaning illusion. So when you go back and look at the movie The Matrix, Neo, who's the higher self, he's the Buddha, right? He's there sleeping, and the alarm clock goes off. It's time for him to wake up spiritually, all right? You got to get to work. You got to do your spiritual work. You got to get to illumination. And in the movie, he had people that came in his hallway to his doorstep, and they're like, trying to invite him out. It was symbolic of him getting enthralled into the worldly life. There's nothing wrong with enjoying, the pleasures of life. You understand what I'm saying? You have to wear clothes. You don't have to walk around and look like, like a rag shag, or like you don't have shit going on. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you can enjoy some good things. Like, she knows, like, every now and then I might go to Zara and get something nice. So that I
listen, your closet already.
Right.
Don't let, today's attire, today's look, he's real chill and comfy today. This man got some stuff in that closet. We be on FaceTime, he's like, yeah, I pulled out this jacket. I'm like, damn, Jay, you did it again. Right. Like, there we go.
And you know what? I'm glad we're touching on that, because you even know today that if it wasn't because of I wanted to have the most efficient, positive, and effective experience, I was gonna keep this thing over my doggone face until you told me just that. It was so crazy that I didn't even want to have an inkling of an identity. I wanted to just be completely covered up. You didn't know who I was, and I was just gonna deliver the message, because that's just my personality. Like me, I don't.
So Aquarian-like.
Very Aquarian-like, and then I could go out and be whoever I was. I was gonna get my hair cut, and go out with my guitar, and you know what I mean. I probably would have smoke the joint right after, like la la la.
Some organic wine.
Some organic wine, right? Have me a vegan burger, like oh, you know what I mean. But I purposely wanted to keep my identity concealed, because I feel like the vast majority of people now are getting so caught up with the identity of being a leader and being a guru and having their image out there, that becomes a mile where they become trapped in that. Now they feel like, oh, people see my face, they think I'm cool, and this, that, and the third, and now they want to be on the screen every day. Mm-hmm. I've seen people who I genuinely had a degree of faith in, thinking that they were on the path, and now they have to do a doggone YouTube video every single day, because it becomes an addiction, because they think every day there has to be a message. Every day doesn't have to be everything for everybody.
Right.
Sometimes you have to go in your prayer closet, and that's just between you and the Lord. What's revealed to you might not be for the masses. When you have a relationship with God, you'll know when and when not to. And you'll know where, how, who, and what to do it with. And this is just a simple, like me, I don't care for attention. Actually, she had to ask me to do this. I've had many people prophesy,
How long have I been asking you to do this, Jay?
Man, I can't even. You were asking me numerous times. You know what I mean? I can't even count hands and feet. And I was, there was a degree of reluctance, because I appreciate privacy. I appreciate being me. I appreciate being free. I don't like to have this identity where it's just like, I was on a podcast and I said this, so now I have to stay in that image and look holier than thou, or whatever the case may be. Like, I'm like, no, after that. Like, this is why I'm just giving you the raw, unadulterated, unfiltered truth about where I stand, without having to have this ego identity or this mask. This is just who I am. I made it abundantly clear in this video that what I understand right now may change. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying this from this particular vantage point, because I'm aware enough to know that there's still more learning that I have to do. There's still degrees of mastery.
That's wisdom.
When we talked about Christ consciousness, you grow in it. And even in the Bible, when they talked about Jesus, he started off as a baby with swaddling clothes, which means that it's almost imperceptible to the initiate when they first start on this journey, but you have to unravel. And in that little infant, that divine image within you starts to grow, and it starts to mature, and then you start to outgrow all other things. But that's a process, and I recognize that I haven't completely finished that process, because obviously I'm still here on the planet, still doing my bit here. So, I don't want it to be construed like, this, that, and the third. This is just me. I don't want to be noticed. I don't want to have that identity. When I walk out the door, I don't even want people to know, oh, that was the dude over there, because I want to be able to live my life. If I'm out there with my nephews or my family, I just want to be ghost like, I don't even recognize that dude. I actually prefer it that way, because now I don't have a particular identity that I'm stuck with. And there's nothing wrong with being on the screen. What I'm saying is, you just have too many people that are getting so caught up with the glamour, and some of them actually started off sincere, and now they get trapped in Maya, where now they feel like every time somebody has a question, that they always have to have an answer. Sometimes a wise guru would know not to even give you the answer, because if you're so in tune, the voice of the Most High would even tell you that person's supposed to experience their answer. You giving it to them is actually hindering their progress. Even oracles know that there's some things that they're supposed to reveal to you,
and
for those that do get readings, and then those that are not supposed to be revealed to you. You know what I'm saying? There's some things that are supposed to be hidden. They may be able to see it, and they're like, they're like, this is not supposed to be said. This is just so you can see, but this is not to be said. It's just like your movie. Your life, like a movie. There's certain snippets where you say, oh, I go through deja vu, or I've seen this, I've seen that, or whatever case may be, and you have that recollection at that moment, but you don't see the entire film, because it would take away from the actual experience. You know what I mean? The experience is actually what's going to be the most essential part. If you're told throughout the whole entire movie, it's like, what's the point?
It's what do you call that? A spoiler.
It's a spoiler.
It's a spoiler.
So, I don't, be in the world, but not of the world. Like, I have, some things that may be considered fancy, but, some of that comes with my astrological disposition. I got a moon in Libra, that's ruled by Venus, beauty, pleasure. So I like to indulge every now and then.
Wait, aren't you double Libra, like Libra moon and rising?
I'm a Libra moon and a Libra rising. So, I enjoy pleasure, Some people may not like people that have Libra placements or considered spineless cowards or whatever the case may be.
And I have a Libra stellium, so I think we have those energies in common. I'm like...
But nonetheless, my point is, I'm being my authentic self by adhering what's true to me. I'm doing what I feel. There's a particular reason why I came into this world or incarnated with that particular vibration, because maybe me having that energy, I could express myself through art. I don't have to, some other people may not be inclined to dress. They do exhibit certain things in other different areas. Everything doesn't have a single way of doing it. And I just want to encourage those of you that are watching that your path may not be Christianity. It may not be Islam. It may not be Hinduism. It may not be that. I've seen people who have never been exposed to religion, and they come in and they have a great understanding about a lot of metaphysical concepts without ever having to be exposed to the gospel or, never had a Quran. There's some people that come straight out of jail and they never had anybody teach them anything, and they learn principles better than some of the people who have been living under this thing. So, never judge anybody. Never think that you know it all, and don't think that just because of what you see on a person's external defines them, because you'd be surprised how many people you come across that you think that know things and they really don't. And there's people that you might think might be a straight up bum or ordinary person, and they know a lot more than you think that they know. They just may not be telling you,
I like the saying, because it's reminding me, every man can be your teacher.
Yeah.
And I always try to, it humbles me when I think like that, because sometimes, you see maybe somebody who looks like they're in psychosis, they're crazy, or you see like somebody who looks like they're a drug addict, or however it goes, but you start to kind of then humble yourself when you think like every man can be your teacher. And you start realizing when you open up and you let, a person kind of do what they were sent on your path to do, you actually gain something valuable from them.
Of course.
I want to go back though, and we can kind of like close out with this, because you were talking about when we were talking about the concept of being in the world but not of the world. Everything you were saying just reminded me so much of being free from attachment. And was it Buddha that said suffering is caused by attachment?
Yeah.
So even like the way you were describing, like how you have nice things, but if you were to lose these sunglasses, which are very nice by the way, it wouldn't be, no skin off your back, like you'd be okay. That to me sounds like you have managed to break free from attachments. Attachments can be beliefs. You can be attached to your beliefs, right? It can be to physical possessions. You can be attached to people, to
places, things.
Places, identities, right? Like, oh, I've always been this way. I've always been this person, right?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
That I find pertinent? I told you that at least from what I identify with is having this Sigma-like personality, right? And I was insisting like, no, I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, I'm not even jumping on that camera. And I realized at that point, I said to myself, even that is an identity. Because me developing that Sigma male type of energy came from a degree of what happened to me as a child. So I had to experience what it was like to be like a lone wolf and to be independent and, being intellectual. And then I realized like this was my perfect opportunity to break out of that. You understand what I'm saying? And it's crazy because now, I had a period of experience where I was dealing with somebody who I perceived as having narcissistic traits. On a core level. I'm saying narcissistic traits so nobody doesn't think that I'm coming off judging. You know what I mean? Because we all got a degree of it, but let's just say for that
There's a spectrum.
There's a spectrum. And then it wasn't until I started looking at this person who was supposed to have been a mirrored image in the matrix of me, and I said, this person exhibits this, or whatever the case may be, where they're very stubborn in their particular ways, and I had to say to myself that I also have a degree of stubbornness. Like, I don't like help from anybody. I like to keep a low profile. I don't like to be the loudest in the room. This was really hard for me to do this because I like to just be able to say like, yo, Kyra, here's this information, you can go talk on it. But you pulled me into it, and I had to break free out of that identity, because when you say, oh, this is something that I just don't do, sometimes you have to be very careful because that can become an identity. And you cannot sit here and say that you know God and then you're stuck in a particular identity. And I'm not saying that we don't all have identities. You know, there's certain things you just might not do. Like, you know, you might not be the type of person that just walks up and randomly stabs people. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So I want to put it into perspective when I'm saying about a particular identity. But, you know, try it one day. You know, you may come in and how you think a person found out about avocado toast? Whoever would have thought would have made toast and say, let me put
some avocado on there,
and
right?
Now you have avocado toast and people are like, cool. You might be the next person to take avocado toast and be like, yo, you know what? Let me see if I could put, you know, some tomatoes, or maybe you might decide to say you want to put some honey mustard. Like, for instance, when we were younger, my younger sister, we always used to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. She was the one where even my parents came and looked like, Becky, what are you doing making mayonnaise and jelly? She used to make mayonnaise and jelly sandwiches, and I actually tried it. I was just like, yo, this is not bad.
Was it really okay? Because honestly, I'm a mayo girl, but I don't like mayo with sweet. You know, it's always usually savory.
Right, but you know what? You'll be surprised how certain tastes and energies blend. Like, you know, you may take you ever had something that was like really, like when I just started this new job, I went and got a chip, and it was just like jalapeno with like mango. So it was like sweet, but it's like
sweet and spicy,
really good because
like a mango habanero.
Right, something like that. So it had a perfect blend. So people discover these things by, you know, improvising. But if you're so caught up into the fact that, you know, you're locked into like, oh, I'm a Buddhist, so I'm not gonna look into anything in ancient Egypt, then there's nothing wrong with that, but really when you get to a degree of illumination, you're gonna realize like the center of what I'm supposed to become is inside of all of that stuff. It's just the coding and the coloring is a little bit different, so therefore you see it as anything different. You understand what I'm saying?
The way I see it, because I like how you said it, and I'm just gonna add to what you said. The way I see it is like, if God is everything, that means that we're always in this existence as we are God in the human form. We're vacillating through all of these different things. If God is everything, he's not really opposed to anything. Let me even say this, and this might come across as controversial, but this is my philosophy. There's a purpose to everything. There is no such thing as good and evil in a sense, because that's the dualistic nature of God's essence, right? God is both. God is all and then the nothing, right? The one and the zero, as you taught me. But I say that to say, when you're in a human incarnation and you're, you know, addicted to drugs, say for instance, or you're addicted to drinking or gambling, people who are judging, people who are so anti-ego, anti the shadow, anti like that inner darkness, they can't see that again, the pendulum has to swing one way so that it can equally swing the other opposite direction. There's a purpose to you vacillating through those different energies in your life. You ever see people, it's a lot of times like the people with the greatest stories, they've been on drugs back in the day, they were in jail back in the day, they had a whole bunch of slew of things that they undergone before they had this massive transformation and even like an awakening. So I do feel like when you are wanting to connect with God, religion is such a box keeper. It's a gatekeeper in a sense to keep you from fully connecting with God, because first of all, a lot of religion, let me just speak to what I know. I don't know a lot about other religions, but Christianity specifically, it's designed to teach you can't get to God unless you have a middleman. And that is absolutely not the truth, unless you're using it metaphorically and the middleman is your divine nature, or like, you know what I mean?
That middleman is your nature to connection yourself.
But they try to personify it as a pastor, a deacon, a reverend. You need that person.
Right.
That person connects you with Jesus, and then Jesus connects you with God. It's like a telephone chain line.
Right.
But that's not actually the truth. And going back again to like that whole vacillating energy, it just kind of feels like as I'm growing in my Christ consciousness, or I'm just growing in gnosis and awareness, I'm realizing that the things that I used to judge within myself, within my journey, and you know some of those things, I'm seeing how they're forming me into this newfound version of myself as I'm growing and learning and developing, that has so much wisdom and awareness now that I'm able to like create things like this and share it with you guys. Because I had to go through those different things. Those things weren't bad per se. They may have been on the lower side vibrationally of the spectrum, but they weren't bad. They were necessary. I know you've been through some things in your life that maybe at one point you deemed as terrible.
Of course.
And then coming out the other side of it, you were able to see the light or the silver lining of the clouds, right?
Absolutely. So to in summation, I want to say that you do have evil, and then you have unnecessary. You have generally evil, and then you have necessary evil. And when I say evil, I want to make sure that I make it abundantly clear that anything that takes away life would be considered evil.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So my my storage was full. We ran out of space, but I cleared it up. So we're gonna continue the conversation before we end, just so that we're not leaving you guys with like, you know, a very abruptly finished or summarized kind of podcast episode. But you were talking about necessary evil versus general evil.
Right. So the difference, and when I spoke about evil, I was talking about anything that takes away life. You know, like they say, evil is live spelled backwards. It's not allowing you to live. So if you needed something that was going to be there to liberate you, and I didn't give you the truth that was going to help you get liberated, especially when I knew it, that's a form of evil.
Okay.
And that is general evil, an unnecessary one. Then you have necessary evils where it's like it seems like it may be depriving you of life, but it's actually there to help redirect you in order for you to get back. So a lot of the time people talk about like, oh, you know, but the devil, and you know how they hate the devil and all the malevolence the devil may exhibit, quote unquote, and or your shadow self is, you know, because we're dealing with two different audiences, so I want to get both, whether you're Christian or metaphysical, whatever. But if you come to think about the concept of the devil or the shadow of the lower self, you would, a lot of time people would never make it back to God unless they experience what it was like to be in the thresholds of the devil. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes a person may be lost and they're like, you know, let me see what it's like to just sit here and just continue to get high and live my life, you know, drinking away or having addictions with sex. Not saying that, you know, you can't indulge in those things, but when it becomes a point where it becomes your go-to, now it starts taking you in those lower realms, and then you start finding yourself feeling like you're in a state of misery because you, deep down within yourself, your Christ consciousness is telling you you're not at the best state that you are. That state of you going through that evil where you have to lose out on all your money, you may have to lose out on your job because you're funding these addictions, your husband or your wife may have to break up with you, or even just certain traits as of being having narcissistic traits or certain childhood trauma that prevents you from receiving love, and not only that, but sharing it and being in your emotions and being in your feelings. That too could be a certain evil where now you've lost out on your relationships, you've lost out on jobs, you've lost out on opportunities. So it might seem like it's an evil then, but that's a necessary evil in order for you to get out of that space, for you to be able to reflect and start working on inner healing, or, you know, being saved, or whatever, however you want to call it, because I want to make sure that I'm appealing to both audiences. So that's what I mean by a necessary evil. So some evils are necessary. And I don't want to look at it as life depriving, but and even sometimes that too, like a person may have to leave this particular existence and come back in another lifetime in another body because they just weren't getting it. They were becoming a total maniac, whether they were killing off masses of people for, you know, some type of ridiculous reason, whether it's a particular ideology, you know, whatever the case may be. But there are general evils which we should in every way, shape or form fight against, regardless of the frontiers. So that be child exploitation. Yes, I'm speaking up about it. That's an evil because you're depriving an innocent being of being able to live out their life freely. The same would go for even creatures, animals. You know, it's called speciesism, where you feel like, you know, because something doesn't speak your language or has, you know, arms like you, it may have wings or whatever the case be different about, that's speciesism. So there's many levels. The idea of evil is very stratified, so we want to speak and know about these things and be empowered to be the best version of ourselves and not be cowards on this journey for things that we know are not conducive. And then you have, like I said, the necessary evil, about certain experiences that you have to go through or situations to get you back in alignment. So you might think God has abandoned you, or God has allowed certain things to happen to you. And there may be various reasons for that. Some people may ask about certain things that happened to them, but I know some of the neglect that I endured as a child when I was younger. It was, I mean, at first, you know, in my lower self, in my emotions, I felt like, yo, why is this happening to me? Why am I being abandoned by my parents? And why am I being neglected? Why do I have to be the quote unquote black sheep or whatever the case may be? With the nappy fro at that, you know, the one that's you know, but nonetheless, I had this I always felt ostracized and alienated, but then I realized that that evil was necessary in order for me to become the person that's sitting here before you viewers today to help say, all right, you know what, I'm kind of getting the message. I needed somebody who was going to explicate or expound or help elucidate or clear up certain things, but somebody who's actually been through that journey, you know what I'm saying? So
100%. But I find that so profound, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier too. Like, I've been through things in life as well, where at the time, due to ignorance, because ignorance is the opposite of wisdom, you're ignorant when you haven't gone through the gnosis process, right?
Correct.
So at that time, what looked like me being dragged through the mud spiritually was really me being further dropped into the gnosis awareness. And now I'm able to, since time has passed, I'm able to look back and say, wow, I see why that needed to happen, or wow, I see why, you know, certain things had to play out the way that they needed to play out. I see why I had to deal with that person or that job or that situation. Or I see why my car had to break down. Like, there's always a rhyme and a reason to why things are happening. I don't believe in subscribe to coincidence, right?
Right.
So I think that's really some great insight for you guys, for you viewers. And I think we can close out now, but I want to ask you one thing, and then we're going to close out with something else. But
Sure.
my podcast is very heavily centered, when I don't have guests and it's just me, on manifestation, right? And that's something we didn't touch on in today's topic, because I wanted us to just free flow, and I wanted the viewers to get like a little snapshot of what our conversations look like. They look just like this. Literally, I'm like taking mental notes. He's dropping all the gems, planting the seeds in my subconscious mind, and I'm just like resonating and like allowing, you know? But what is your take on manifestation? Do you practice actively manifesting things, or do you just kind of just go through the motions of life and allow things? Like, when you have a goal and you want to achieve the goal, do you, like, what's your process, I guess is what I'm asking.
So I'll say this, that manifestation, I do believe in it within due parameters, which means due boundaries within a particular line. I feel like, this is me personally, and I don't mean to offend anybody who is into manifestation, but for me personally, I feel like people in the quote-unquote conscious community sometimes tend to magnify, or how could I say it? They tend to exploit this idea of manifestation and think, oh, you can manifest anything you want. And I personally find that somebody has to elucidate on the fact that some things are within divine will. In other words, like, don't think that, you know, you're just going to manifest whatever you want if it's not part of the script that you came here to do. So for instance, you know, in my earlier years, I've had a hard time manifesting a relationship that was based upon monogamy with a young lady that was healthy. You know what I mean? But I understood too that part of my purpose was to get into the knowledge and wisdom, so that way when I do connect with somebody, we have an equal give and take, or I can at least share, and it helped me focus on my particular goal or journey. So when we talk about manifestation, it has to be within divine will. Don't think that, you know, you're going to come out of a previous incarnation or previous life as a stone cold killer like, I don't know, Hitler or Haman Rouge or whoever, whatever the case may be, or whatever the case, we got nothing against it, but I'm just saying, you're just having an energy in which you're like, you know, you're just going to exhibit some type of degree of destruction, and think that, you know, you're just going to come in here, you're just going to be like, well, I just want to come and incarnate and just have $1 million. You come here with a particular karmic debt. You understand what I'm saying? Which is why you're back here. That has to be paid.
Yeah.
So if you don't pay the debt, you could try to manifest all you want, but there's eternal laws, and cause and effect is one of them. So if your cause caused lots of people misery and suffering in your earlier years, the effect is you have to pay that consequence. For instance, you know, people could talk about, I could get into a long list. I'm not going to mention any names so people are not offended, because some people get very sensitive when you use names as an example, but you might have celebrities that might have been using the vibration of, you know, we were in the previous Piscean era. You know, Pisces is ruled by Neptune, dreamy, illusions and everything like that. So they're using that Piscean energy to like entertain people and keep them in illusions, thinking that life is only about just getting money and, you know, living this lavish life. And I'm not saying there's anything living a lavish life, but we're talking about hyper consumerism when some of the people can't even afford to live in the particular areas that they're in, and they're promoting this attitude of gangsterism. And I ain't got nothing against anybody gangster, but I'm saying for certain people who were not born to be that. You understand what I'm saying? Some people are supposed to be aligned to things, and they're using their potential and their power for things that, you know, could have served a different purpose or could have been used in a slightly different way, with a slightly different touch. Don't think that later on that you're going to just come and say, yo, you're going to keep manifesting and thinking that karmic consequences are not going to come up and catch up with you. It's like somebody who constantly goes around, let's say you catch 3, 4, 5 bodies and not think that at some point you're realizing that you are destroying or taking away the will of another being, which has the divine life or the divine particle or divine principle, Christ consciousness or God inside of them, and you're depriving them of their will and thinking that somehow or some way that it's not going to affect you, where you're not going to have to sit here and smoke or drink away to suppress the fact that you have deprived that person. And not, again, this is not any judgment who might have done it out of ignorance or accident or, you know, just really unknowing, but I'm saying everything has consequences behind it. So a lot of people like to do manifestation rituals or whatever the case may be. You know, you get nothing against it. They open up these magazines or get these fancy books and like, yo, do this ritual to manifest love. But you have to know whether you actually truly deserve that love. How are you going to try to manifest somebody else and do a love spell on somebody else and manifest them into your life, and you haven't really truly understood what divine love is? Because if you knew what divine love is, you wouldn't be forcing or imposing your will on somebody else.
100%.
That's when it becomes sorcery. There's already something pre-set up and you are altering it, which is against what was destined for you. So I just have to put that out there so when we talk about manifestations. But I will say this, because I know I wanted to drive this point home. When it comes to manifestation, really getting into that, to manifest true and good conducive manifestation, you want to be connected with source and in your higher self, which means that if you're a Christian, you want to be truly connected with Christ. If you are, you know, somebody who follows Siddhartha or Gautama, you really want to be connected with the Bodhi inside of you. Same thing with India, the Hindus, you want to be connected with that Krishna consciousness. And if you're a Muslim of that sort, you really want to have truly submitted to the will of the divine. So when you do that, it makes it a lot easier because you are connected with source. So source can actually scan and survey your mind and see what you need on a soul level and what your mind is actually projecting, and make sure it's not coming from a very trivial or egotistical place. There's nothing wrong with asking for basic material things, but make sure these material things that you're asking for are in alignment with you fulfilling your mission. So me asking for a house would be something where I could say, you know what, I don't want to live in my uncle's attic, which I don't live there, by the way, for any of you ladies, you know, wondering. But you know what I mean? And saying, oh, I just want a house. And I'm like, no, I need the house because I'm an air sign. So air, I like to have space. I want to be in my own thing. You know what I mean? That allows me to maximize my frequency. In other words, be the truest version of myself without feeling claustrophobic or feeling like I'm downtrodden and, oh, I have to go, you know, work this particular job that's not paying me the wages. So when you talk about manifestation, be mindful of your manifestations, and also know, maybe even get a spiritual reading, find out what your karmic debt is. You know, you can't sit here and leave off in the last situation and know that you've just violated somebody in a previous situation or whatever relationship. You need to make amends and think that you're going to have karmic debt and you're going to try to keep manifesting, because the kind of manifestations you're going to get is going to be pure chaos. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you're not even in tune with the energy that you're already in, whether you have karmic debt or not. You can't be in tune with God and know whether your debt is paid for, whether you're on a clean slate. So for the people that are talking about manifestation, make sure that you're in a higher frequency. Try to be in the highest frequency and make sure you're doing this according to the blueprint that fits your life, and not making sure that it breaches parameters of being greedy or, you know,
consumerism,
hyper consumerism or things of that sort, or whatever the case may be. Because sometimes you may just ask and request that, and because now you're supposed to know better and you're still asking for, well, I want 3 ladies in a jacuzzi so I could, you know, whatever, have my fun with. Now you get that, and now you have 2 or 3 women pregnant, and now you're stuck paying child support in 3 different ways, and all that money that you manifested, you're being taxed like 60-70% of whatever you got, because you manifested, you kept asking for it, and it has to be given to you to a certain degree for you to learn. You didn't learn that being in tune with God, it has to be within due parameters. And I have to say that when it comes to manifestation, because everybody's just like, manifest whatever you want, and it's just
the
like
new trend. Yeah,
it doesn't work that way, and a lot of people are being fooled and beguiled, like it says in the scripture. For those of you that are Christians, in Matthew it tells you that many false Christ Antichrist shall arise and deceive many. People are really thinking that it's going to be somebody with a halo in their head, dressed down with hair like Christ. I'm like, no, it's people who are presenting themselves as being this figure anointed to be able to teach. And a lot of people are not anointed to teach because they don't know what they're teaching. Some of them are actually really have been put there by the divine and having the veil over their eyes because the divine already knows their heart. So they're there as a forefront for you in the back, for you to get past through the test and be able to say, okay, that's what I'm not supposed to be.
Keep going.
But yeah, so with this manifestation thing, please know where you stand at. Make sure that your primary objective is getting in tune with God, the Most High, Source, Allah, whatever you want to call it, and make sure that you're fulfilling your mission, because you can manifest a lot of things, but make sure it's, it comes from the appropriate desire. Some people are asking for things that come from an ego-based point of view. They want somebody who they used to be in a relationship with because they have a particular physical feature or attachment to a particular energy that person had, and it's not conducive for their higher self. And I've been in that situation before, like, oh my gosh, she's got like the Baywatch body, and I'm like, you know what I'm saying? You're
Baywatch body.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're over there lighting candles and sitting here, now you don't read your Bible. Now you're over here opening up your Bible and saying, dear Lord, let me manifest these cheeks. You understand what I'm saying? And now, you know what I'm saying? Now you done did a ritual to bring back something that wasn't supposed to be back inside of your life. That person, and it's crazy because sometimes people are, a lot of people want to deal with love because we all want to be loved. That's a central part of being God. But now you're manifesting somebody else's soulmate. So now a lot of people are in relationships where they're married to somebody else and it's somebody else's soulmate. They were only in your life for a particular thing to learn certain things and then go about, and then you're going back. You're trying to press rewind to go back to that particular scene in that movie just because you fell in love with it. Now you have an attachment. Now your identity, your emotions are so in that particular thing, and you miss out on the rest of the movie. And you miss out on timeline. So this manifestation thing, I have to make that abundantly clear because so many people are, manifest this and manifest that. And I've seen a lot of people who've been talking this manifestation for like 8-9 years. And I'm like, what happened? You said you was going to be rich, and they didn't manifest it because they weren't truly walking in divine essence, seeking the Most High. And they were fated to do so, but their fate changed based upon a degree of ignorance, where they were like, I want to be a millionaire, but why do you want to be a millionaire? We are in an age right now where so many people are sick, so many people are homeless, so many people are misguided, and they need that guidance, and you're just only thinking about sitting your feet up and have a fancy loft in a condominium just so you can sit here and go on Instagram and be like, you know what I'm saying? Walking down the street, you walk past like 8-9 homeless people, with the fancy shades on. And I'm not saying that you got to give to everybody, but we start to perpetuate this egoism that we're seeing in the media to the point where sometimes you could be walking past somebody else who you could change their life, where they could go and back and change the life of 500 people because you did one thing. But you calling yourself a child of God and you're not even aware what your mission is. So a lot of time we want to talk about manifestation. Why don't you manifest being the highest and best version of yourself? Start with that, and then you'll see how other things will fall into alignment. That's why he said, first seek ye the kingdom and all other things shall be added onto you, because a lot of people don't understand when you manifest gnosis and divine consciousness, a lot of the time other things you start to realize it's just an illusion. You don't even care. You understand what like for instance with me, abundance is coming my way, glory be to the Most High, but I'm at the point right now where it's like the happiness that's taking place in me, the bliss, the joy that I got going on, it's like that's an added thing, but it doesn't identify me. You understand? You see me. I came out just like, I don't feel like getting a haircut.
You did. You was like, no, I'm not. It's not the vibe. I was like, listen.
I don't want my face on TV. You know what I'm saying? It's just that and the third. But I knew that I was divinely called to come and deliver a message because you don't know who it might help. And this lesson might be a lesson for somebody else. While I feel inspired. So I had to take myself out of my ego and my personality and my quote unquote trauma, what I think. And I had to listen, this is what the divine is calling me to do. I got to go and do it. That is true Islam when you submit. You understand what I'm saying? That's listening to your Christ consciousness when you're in tune with that voice. You know what I'm saying? That's being a bodhi when you're able to get into the monad. You know what I'm saying? You're able to really get in tune with that. And I really think, again, I know I kind of went off, but it still connects with manifestation because it's like you can manifest in two different realms because everybody has a spirit, and spirit causes you to spiral. You can spiral upward, you can spiral downward, because I've seen people manifest nothing but pure BS and chaos in their life where they're like, I want to manifest power, and they manifest the doggone a Glock with a switch on it, and now some of them are doing life behind bars. That's a form of manifestation. You understand what I'm saying? Because, you think limited and say, I could use this to go and do this, instead of going doing this, and that limited form of thinking could put you in limited circumstances. You understand what I'm saying?
100%.
Cause and effect. You could say, I just want a relationship, and you don't have the details in it, and then it's like going to the bakery and just say, I just want a cookie. And
you can get any cookie.
Yeah, you're like asking you want an oatmeal cookie, you want a strawberry cookie.
You fuck around and get some macadamia nuts and you be allergic.
Yeah, and you know what the worst thing is? The worst thing is that you just say, I don't care, just give me whatever cookie you think, and the person that's working behind the thing, they might happen to be having a lousy day, and they sit here and just put some doggone stuff that you would have never thought, like, now you open up the box, you're like, what the you know what I'm saying? No, because it happens, you know what I'm saying?
You're not wrong.
Every time we do it, we be like, because I was like that too. It was just like, I want a relationship, but with somebody who love me. And then I started coming across these histrionic narcissists, people that were just like, I'm like, whoa. Now I'm like, yo, you know what? I'm gonna have to go back and put some ingredients to this, because y'all not gonna play with me and manifest this stuff. It ain't happening. You know what I'm saying? So,
100%.
I have to drive this point home, because you have so much falsehood, and so many people are getting caught up with the new wave, and we're in the age of Aquarius. So there's like a flood of information, and people have to be able to filter it out, because people want to manifest that, this and that, or whatever the case may be. Know what you're manifesting and why you're doing it. That's the whole point. The
why is so important.
Right, it's very important. Everybody you want something, and then some people manifest things. Look at how many celebrities now. A lot of them, you're seeing a central theme where a lot of celebrities are going to jail. They're getting caught up in all these things, or whatever the case may be, and people are letting go of all the secrets about how they sign contracts and oaths and blood to do this, to get that, whatever the case may be, giving up relatives, or just doing, cheating people out of deals, or whatever the case may be, and they're manifesting. But now all the cars and all the clothes and all the stuff is making them unhappy, because you know why? The truth about what they did for it all is now starting to sit, and they try to ignore it, sniffing up coke or doing whatever the case may be. And I pray for these people, because as true children, you should pray for them. They're struggling inside these meat vessels just like you and I. So don't look at them and think just because they have more money and you're at McDonald's or you're a greeter at Walgreens that did, but it's just a different struggle, different finances. Is the same thing. You understand what I'm saying? But my point is that they manifest things and now they're unhappy. Some of us manifest in small ways. You go to job, you work 2 weeks to get your paycheck, and you want them brand new sneakers. 3 months later, the sneakers are still sitting in the closet, because that girl that you were trying to, the girl or the guy that you bought these heels or these shoes for, you thought you was using that to manifest a relationship, and then the person sits here ghost you because you realize which the energy you was using to manifest them with was only a particular frequency that only brings people with that type of mentality. They found somebody else who could manifest a little bit better, and they left you. So when you want to manifest, be mindful of what you call these manifestations. And some things, if you have a particular calling on your life, they're just not going to come until the divine allows it. And I'll be the first one to tell you, because I thought I was trying to manifest something. Boy, oh boy, I was in for it. You know what I'm saying?
Isn't God the best teacher?
Yeah, well, I mean, it tells you that in the Quran. It tells you that, man plot, the devil plot, but Allah is the best of planners. You know what I'm saying? So, a lot of the time we think we're slick, and we be on the chessboard, and we be thinking like, oh, you think, oh, God's not looking. You slide a little look over here, whatever, like, 'cause, you want to get to that square. You're trying to get closer and closer to your destination. Or you ever did that? You ever played chess with somebody who was good, and they just kept beating you behind on the board? And, they get called, they get a phone call, or they got to go get the popcorn out the microwave, and you're like, this bastard's beating me. So you switch something on the piece, so you try to cheat, and they come back, and they still kick you behind, because they didn't sit here and say, you know what I'm saying? That's how it is. You can't do it with somebody who's already pre-set up the plan for you.
The master architect.
The master architect. So continue, talking about, and I'm saying this without sounding harsh or judgmental, but I have to get it out there. There's got to be like some degree of warrior spirit to speak this truth unfiltered, while there's so much, there's a cesspool of like nonsense flowing, and people just thinking that they're just coming to manifest whatever they want. Just be careful, because if you are granted with that manifestation, guess what? The scope is on you, and the joke is on you.
Ooh, you got bars today, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, let them know about my album that's coming out. You know what I'm saying? I got these shades off for a reason.
Yo, this episode went crazy. Thank you for that beautiful explanation. I agree with everything. I guess I want to end it with this, and this will be like our last little hurrah. So for the people who are watching, who maybe they're just starting out their spiritual journey, or they haven't, but maybe they came across this, this episode by chance. Well, not by chance, but by alignment. What advice do you have to the people who are novices at what you have grown to be very masterful at?
So I want to make it clear that also I too, in somebody else's eyes, I'm a novice.
That's true.
But for the sake of those people who feel like, I have took a few steps ahead of them at the particular time. Right. But you also got to remember that pool that I was talking about, we're all one and the same. So now my healing is also helping you.
That is true.
You understand what I'm saying?
That is true.
All of us are being affected by it in an unconscious or subconscious way, But nonetheless, my advice for you said for the viewers in regards to what?
Basically, who are not as far advanced in their spiritual journey as you are, or maybe they're not on the path yet, but maybe this is catalyzing something for them. What advice do you have for them, or like just words of love, encouragement, wisdom?
Okay. I got you. So I just want to take 3 minutes to hopefully penetrate the hearts of some of you that are sincerely just looking, like those of you who, since you were younger or some point in your life, just felt like all you just wanted was peace, happiness, joy, and you just wanted to live an abundant life. Like it is, whatever you consider abundant. But for those of you who have a sincere desire to connect with source or the very being that created you, my advice to you is to follow the white rabbit. In other words, you abide by your intuition. And when you feel a gut feeling that tells you I need to go left, you should go left without question. Sometimes you may have to go back and visit, but stick with that original gut and you know what? Never be afraid to question. Questions lead you to the very place that you need to go. It was me when I was locked and stuck in religion. I'm like, if I go out of this, God is going to throw me in the fire. And I had
the lake of fire.
Yeah, the lake of fire. I was already swimming in it spiritually because it was like a stream of hell. I was just like, man, just by the mere fact that I couldn't question God, I always felt the torment. For those of you who think, thinking about this lake of fire, you're just streaming it in your everyday life because it tells you in night and day in the Bible. So there's no night and day in hell. You know what I'm saying? Except for
it's just hell.
Right. But nonetheless, don't be afraid to question anything because anybody who has your true intentions is never going to tell you not to question anything. Actually, that was a major thing with me. I started questioning a lot of things about life, and my dad was the one who told me that I asked too many questions. And look at how my life turned out. Now I had more answers about life that I didn't think I was going to get, such as, is there really true a God? How could I connect with this God? What is the existence of it all? And I found much of these answers through much of my research and questioning what I had. So it's like being in a relationship. Imagine you're in a relationship with someone and you ask them like, hey, I'm just curious as to whether, we truly love each other, whether there's a loyal thing going on over here. And I'm like, hey, may I see your phone? And then, your partner's just like, oh, well, what do you need to see the phone for? That right there should already tell you that's a red flag. You know what I'm saying? A person who truly, they would have been like, yeah, you could have the doggone pin and passcode because there's nothing too high. You understand what I'm saying? So if you're, quote unquote, finding yourself still caught up in a doctrine or religion, which it ain't even really religion, because true religion is supposed to relink you back to the creator where the word really God it comes from. That's if you understand it. But my point is that if you don't find yourself getting more answers, you need to get out as fast as you can. You know what I mean? If whatever situation that you're dealing with, if it doesn't give you more answers, if it doesn't set you free, it doesn't grant you more peace, chances are it's really not for you. That's a message that I want to give to the viewers, and have a lot of discernment. Everything that you see on the surface these days is not usually what it really is. That's it, man. Just use your intuition, follow whatever your gut is telling you, and be true to yourself. One thing I could honestly say, two of the most powerful things that I've known in the universe, one is love and authenticity is the other.
100%.
You could have a lot of things, but if you don't have those, your foundation is crumbling. You don't have anything. You could pretend to be whatever you want to be. You could I could have went over here and got all fancy and dressed up just to have views or whatever the case may be. I go home at peace. I go home like you could look and yo, oh my God, I want to see pictures of him when he was dressed up. I could care less because I'm I'm in a state of inner peace and inner knowing that I have the greatest love that I'm going to get from the Creator, and it's taking place in me, and I can exude that in the world, and I don't need validation from anyone. And I'm not saying that I don't want your love. If you know, you like it, a brother, put your number in the doggone comment section. I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But my point is that, you know, make sure that you're living authentically. I started off where I became a vegetarian. People used to clown me for it. Like, what are you doing as a black guy being a vegetarian? You're supposed to have some baby back ribs. You know, my mom was from the South. You know, you better put some pork rinds on that, boy. And I just didn't feel like eating it anymore. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. And at one point, I went back to it because my friends were clowning me. And then it just kept sitting in my soul. So when it's something is sitting in your soul, it's there. The Creator is trying to nudge and tell you, hello, you need to get this rectified. So I decided to continue in my vegetarian lifestyle, and I disassociated from anybody who had a problem with it. I didn't judge them because it's just an eating lifestyle. You know, it's just something that I wanted to do. And I went about that. That's who I was authentically. And it paid off for me. This is just an example. It's not a judgment for anybody who wants to have whatever they have, but it paid for me because everybody sees me. They're like, yo, your skin is glowing. Oh my God. Like, I can't believe you're
healthy as a horse.
Yo, you look like you're like 19. You know how many times I'm like, I might have gone into a wine store and bought a bottle of wine. And the person's like, oh, can I see your ID? And then when I show them their ID, they're like, oh my gosh, it could be my father. And I'm like, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Crazy.
Right, but it paid off for me because my intuition, that was my path for me to live a holistic life in order to help others. So had I not done that, I would not be in a position to tell other people about, you know, how I got to where I was at. So when you hear that inclination and nudging, it might be for a particular reason. You might have what's called a calling. You know, don't be afraid to be who you truly are. Like me, I don't like to be in, you know, the open stream, but guess what? Like, you know, I came out here and did it, but that's who I am. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to help friends and other thing. And then look, and I actually wound up enjoying this experience. I'm being my authentic self because I came out here and said what I had to do without, you know, having to feel like as if like, oh, you know, I got to do this extra. This is just me, how me and her flow and talk. We'd be on the phone, tons of jokes, but we could get to the business and talk serious. So whatever is you. You know, you wound up being inspired to become a vegetarian for a short period of time.
I went raw vegan for like 120 days.
For 120 days. So you don't know how you might inspire. And that's just an example. It doesn't mean that you have to stay on that drink. It's just you don't know how people might take to certain things. Like you might have a time where you're like, oh, you always got to keep up with the Joneses, and you watch this video and you're like freaking like, you know what? I
the freak flag
fly. You're like, yo, you know what? I'm gonna have a day where you know how many celebrities have money, and then you see them, they look like straight up bums. When you see them, they're like white tee and just raggedy jeans and just pushing down the stroller with some shades on or whatever the case may be, and they could sit here and pay. They could buy your doggone life. I'm saying that, you know, of course I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. But my point is just be who you are authentically, because there's an old saying in the Gospel of, I don't know if it was in the Gospel of John or the Gospel of Thomas, where Christ said, bring forth what is within you, because what is within you shall save you. But if you bring forth not as within you, what is within you will destroy you. And in other words, you have something deep seated within your soul. In the Quran, it tells you that we know what your soul whispers. You know what I'm saying? Because they say Allah is nearer to you than the juggler man. So whatever's inside of you is going to be the very thing that's actually going to set you on the course that you need to go to, and you need to stick with that, regardless of what kind of ridicule or judgment you're going to get. Because some of the people that are judging you now, they might be following you later. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
I'm just saying, you know, but whatever. And I want to leave it with this. There's an old wise saying that says that he or she that follows the crowd usually goes no further than the crowd. But he or she that doesn't follow the crowd usually ends up where the crowd has never been before.
Ooh, damn! You did it with that one, Jedi.
That's the interlude on my first album that I'm working on.
Somebody get this man in the booth right now. No, absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much for agreeing to, I know I've been begging you for months.
Oh.
Thank you for agreeing to like do this and making the time and like, you know, delivering some gems to the people, because I feel like a lot of people who are aligned with this episode are really going to resonate with a lot of the things that you're sharing. And I'm going to end with this. So the theme of this, because the podcast is called the I Can and I Will podcast. And I always like to tell people, based on what we're conversing about in any given episode, like, you can take this wisdom and you can apply it and you will get results.
Right.
So based on what we talked about today, I would say you can tap into Christ consciousness. And it's my intention that after listening to this, the seeds have been planted in the right places at the right time that will allow you to eventually actually end up doing it. So you can and you will. And with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you are on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast audio spaces, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. We're almost done with season 1. This again has been Jonathan, aka the Jedi, aka what's your rap name, Jay?
The aggravated Ayatollah.
The aggravated Ayatollah. aka one of my best friends, you guys. Listen, it's been real. We love you guys so much. And until the next episode, peace out.